We have what I think is both a very fun and a very interesting and meaningful show for you today. This was a fun conversation with our special guest, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time once again for Coffee Breaks with Steve. I want to tell you a little bit about our guest for today and what prompted me to reach out to her. Today, we're going to be visiting with Chryssie Whitehead. Chryssie is originally from South Carolina. She began her career right out of high school as a Radio City Rockette. She started out as a learning to dance, and you'll hear her talk about this at a very young age. And she trained in musical theater at American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City and then 20 years later went on to perform the role of Velma on Broadway in Chicago as an understudy and came out in that role on Broadway. But that's not where she started. She's had a career spanning 25 years working bi-coastal in Los Angeles and New York, acting in over 13 television shows, including Grey's Anatomy, film, including the recent remake of West Side Story. She's also sometimes known for her role in the romantic comedy with Raven-Symoné, Revenge of the Bridesmaids. She made her Broadway debut in the revival of A Chorus Line in 2006, where she's featured landing the role of Christine in the documentary Every Little Step. If you haven't seen that documentary, it's available on Amazon Prime, Every Little Step, and it tells the story of A Chorus Line and the revival in 2006. You get to see Chryssie there, but it's just a great documentary. She leads a creative artistic life, teaching across the globe, and now spends a lot of her time directing and choreographing. Her past shows include Grease, Chicago, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, Beauty and the Beast, Shrek, Into the Woods, and All Shook Up. She's a proud co-founder of a mentoring performing arts educational company with her best friend of 20 years in the business, passing it on to the next generation of artists through Broadway Arts Community. Chryssie recently wrote a one-woman show focused on mental illness, a true story shared with the goal of spreading hope and awareness globally. The show is called In My Own Little Corner, a work in progress with bipolar disorder, and it's going to make its New York debut on November 5th of this year at the Riverside Theater. And there's more info about Chryssie and her upcoming show on her website. We'll talk about that at the end of this this conversation. But right now, I want to give you the opportunity to meet and get to know Chryssie Whitehead. Well, Chryssie Whitehead, thank you so much for joining us today on Coffee Breaks with Steve. It's great to meet you. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Steve. It's really fun. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, this is an interesting topic because we're talking about not only life as a performer, which you have been, but we're talking today. One of the things that really interested me about your story is that as we look at performers, sometimes we look at people in the acting profession or people who are professionals as singers, actors, whatever it might be. And particularly once they've kind of made it, however we define that, we think, it's going to be easy. And we're going to talk a little bit today, kind of how that journey works out and how your journey has gone individually. But you're a very well-rounded performer. I mean, you're an actor, you're a singer, you're a dancer, and we're going to talk about other things that you're doing since then. But what was your first area of interest as a child when it came to that kind of performing? Where did you start?
Yeah. Well, I'm Chryssie. Hello, everyone. Thanks again. I'm born in South Carolina in Columbia. I've been in this business for over almost 25 years now. So at 18, I had started out as a rockette right out of high school. But the first love for me was a dancer. I was dancing at 3 years old in tap class. I did tap 3, 4, and 5, and then I started a dance studio when I was 6, and then joined in ballet and jazz and hip hop and major dancer.
And so, and we make assumptions about that. I assume if you were doing that at such a young age, that your parents must have been very supportive of what you were doing. And you know, for some parents, it's get the kids to all the sporting events, whatever. With you, was it getting you to dance class all the time?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were divorced, but they both were very supportive. My mom was the one that really just drove me everywhere for all the dance classes, all the dance lessons. And she just got lucky, I think, because I loved it so much. So my mom
Hmm.
wasn't a pusher. She was someone that really was like, you love this. Now you're going to work really hard at it. So she was a coach, like a cheerleader,
Yeah.
um, in that way. So yeah, it wasn't like a pushing thing. I loved it so much. I call dance my best friend.
Ah, I like that.
Yeah.
It's good to have one of those. You
Yeah.
mentioned being a rockette, and you know, I don't know. I mean, I think looking at your website that's
Yeah.
mentioned, but how can you briefly just kind of talk about that experience, how that happened, how long
Yeah.
you did that?
Yeah. I actually auditioned for it when I was a senior in high school. I was a very competitive dancer. I danced at competitions. I was pretty much a top soloist in the country. I worked very, very hard. I loved it. And then I got the Rockettes really quick, like at 18 and at 19. So I did it in LA the first year. I did it in New York City at Radio City Music
Oh
Hall.
my gosh.
And yeah, and I was the baby, like the baby of there was not many people that were young. Nowadays, it's really a lot of young dancers get it.
Hmm.
But at the time, there was a roster that you couldn't get out of. I loved it. I was a toy soldier. I did all the things that are,
The holiday stuff that
yes,
everybody knows about.
everybody knows about. Um, and it wasn't the job for me.
Mm.
I could not stand out. I could not perform too big. I would get notes a lot about how much joy and overperforming.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if this is it for me. Like if I have to stand and not and be one of 32 people that all look the same and smile the same. I don't know if I could do that. So I
Wow.
yeah, and I really missed theater. I had done theater in high school. I did a chorus line when I was in community theater at 14 years old and was like, what is this? So I already had like musical theater kind of in the back burner. And I think after doing the Rockettes, it made me want to go be a well-rounded performer. So I went to school to AMDA in New York City and trained.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. For people who may not know what AMDA
Oh
is.
yeah. American Musical and Dramatic Academy. It's a college and a conservatory for the performing arts. I went
Yeah.
to the conservatory. So
Okay.
it's hardcore training in musical theater. I found my mentor there, and I now cut full circle. I direct and teach there now. So
Yeah.
it's been good to me. AMDA's been good to me.
You mentioned uh, performing in a chorus line, and that brings us to another chapter, another segment of your life and
Mhm,
your career, is that
mhm.
you had the opportunity to be in the Broadway revival of a chorus line, and you were still at a fairly young age still.
26, yeah.
And what was that experience like?
Everything and more. I mean, when you get to Broadway, and especially in a show like that, you really are in the Olympics of musical theater.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of no's that came before that yes. There were a
Yeah.
lot of shows I auditioned for back and forth. I was living in LA and coming to New York and auditioning and auditioning and auditioning. And I was 26, but I grew a ton. I had my first like speaking lines on stage. I had all the training that I had for acting and singing at AMDA really paid off years later. And it gave me the bug to want to be an actress, to really want to be an actress. So
Hmm.
I was already in LA prior to getting a chorus line on Broadway, did a chorus line on Broadway, and then had the bug again to go back to LA and be a TV actress.
the One of the interesting things about that revival of a chorus line is that it was captured in the documentary Every Little Step. And I will just tell people who may be watching, if you have not seen that documentary, you have any interest in theater, musical theater, and getting a real, well, I was going to say a real sense for what auditioning is like.
It's pretty real.
I mean, that was quite a journey too. It's all compressed, but that happened like over the course of 8 months, just to 8 or 9 months, just to get to the from the original cattle call auditions with several thousand people to the point where the cast was actually
Yeah,
identified. That documentary, I mean, it feels very it's hard to watch that and not feel like you're drawn in and feeling the tension and the anxiety and the moments. Did the documentary how did you feel the documentary
portrayed.
really, did it how did it treat you and how did you feel treated the process?
I think for the most part, I would say 80-90% of it was very accurate. Um, the truth is they were going for a year of auditioning, but my
Yeah.
truth was not 8 months. You know, I was about 2 months into the end of it, and I was
Wow.
in LA, and you don't see that audition. I was in LA first because I was living in LA. They had a call, and then they
Mm,
said, "Can you come back?" And then when you come back, you may or may not be asked to go to the final callback, but you
wow.
need to take a week off of work in order to, yeah. So what they didn't really spell out all that. Um, everything's pretty accurate with all of us. Like, yes, I have always, especially in my 20s and my 30s, have been has this kind of like giddy energy and gets excited and is a little sporadic and a little scattered. And I think they definitely captured that. And I
Yeah.
think that it was really genuine and definitely a part of who I am then. Um, and that I think we can talk about with my show. But so I think that really worked, and that they just capitalized on that, and it didn't bother me because it's true. I mean, I was running into cameras, and I was a mess, and I was excited, and I was thrilled, and I was like, I was all the things for a chorus line on Broadway. Like I was literally
Yeah.
like, I am auditioning for this.
Yeah.
This is the joy. And so I had a ball auditioning for it. So I think they captured that. And then the people that were super happy for me, they knew I was in LA. Jay Bender is a casting director who
Yes.
he passed his way. He's passed away now.
Yes.
But he was a casting director, really loved his actors. And he really rooted for you. And I
Yeah.
just felt very seen by him. And he really wanted me to get it. And what you didn't see is that I actually had to go back to LA and then come back again and audition
Wow.
because they got nervous when they put me with Tony at the last minute on the stage. So
Yeah.
that is not documented in every little step. So those of
Wow.
you who know the show, so if you don't know it, it's very accurate. There's a lot that goes on. You get to see heartache, you get to see excitement, you get to see hard work, sweat and tears. And I think the word on the street is that it's coming back to Broadway in 2025.
Wow. Really? It's one that needs to I didn't it's interesting, Chrissy, because we were in when did it actually open on Broadway? It was in the fall,
1975.
but I mean, in the revival,
Oh,
was it the
2006.
fall? Was it the fall of
Yeah.
2006?
It's in October, I think.
We were in New York that summer before it opened.
Oh,
And I remember when and we were seeing I think we were seing ads that it was going to be opening. I remember thinking because I've seen it 2 or 3 times
yeah.
in, on tour. And I thought, "Oh, man, to be able to see a chorus line on Broadway would be" it's one of those that you kinda go, "If I could see it here, that would be extra special." But, yeah, it would be cool if it does make it back. It's one of those that
I have a
deserves
feeling
to
it
come back.
will.
Yeah,
Just John, I think there was an announcement that a while ago, like years ago,
okay.
where John was like, "Yes, we will be doing it on its 50-year anniversary."
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
That makes
So
a lot of sense.
2025 is when that would be. So we'll see.
I think a lot of people, when you look at that, you say, "Wow, okay, you made it on Broadway." And you were talking about you were doing stuff in LA. You went back and did more stuff in LA. We'll talk about that as well. But I think a lot of people don't realize that when you land a role of that magnitude, once you people say, "Wow, now you've made it. You're on Broadway."
Mhm.
Whether it's stage or it's movies or it's television or whatever it might be, at that level, and people assume that then, well, it's easy from there. The casting directors are knocking on your door and you don't have to work for it anymore. That's not really accurate, is it? You have to continue to put yourself out there every single time and really push and fight for everything you want.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think that it does help when you finally get to a point where you're at that caliber and people know who you are. I mean, I had a lot of people know who I was, and it would get me in more rooms because they
Hmm.
knew who I was now because they've seen me in the show. However, you still really are only as good as your last gig. Like I got a chorus line and I got Christine and I did my very best with that. But that was never a guarantee that the next job I got had to do with the fact that I got Christine on
Hmm.
Broadway.
Hmm.
So I think that it is a misnomer, and that you are always, our job as artists is that we're always working our craft and we're always auditioning, and our job is to audition because
Yeah.
we cannot control if we're going to book or not, but we can control how we audition, how prepared we are, the work we're doing in the room, the fact that like when they watch us, they go, we can't control that, but we can do
Right.
our work. And so, yeah, it's not a guarantee. I left Broadway and listen, they're all choices. I probably could have stayed in New York and I might have had a more consistent career in New York on Broadway
Okay.
than I did, but I did go back to LA because I wanted to be the next Sandra Bullock. I was like,
Hmm.
I really, it was like a dream of mine. I really wanted it was kind of driving me to be the romantic comedy girl after
Hmm.
Christine. And then I did go out there and it took me another 3 years till I started booking television work.
Yeah.
Um, and then little by little, like when you see highlights, you see highlighted of people, right? But like
Right.
if I did 4 guest stars in a year, that's only about 4 weeks of work in a year.
Right. Right.
Right? But you're
Right.
thinking, oh, she was on Grey's Anatomy, she was on Private Practice and Warehouse 13 and all this stuff. And then she did a musical in between and she did a thing. Like, and yes, but then the artists have so much to look at. Like we have to look at how we manage our money. We have to look at how we budget because we may get a great job that pays us X, Y, and Z, but then you've got to like take care of yourself for the next
Right.
couple months. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a learning curve all the time. And I
Oh
am
goodness.
happy to say that I am a teacher and a mentor with my company, Broadway Arts Community, with my best friend, who we act as mentors and people who we needed when we were younger. And
Yeah.
that's what we're doing now. And it's pretty remarkable to be able to pass it on and give it back to the next generation of artists.
Talk about that just a little bit,
Yeah.
Chryssie, because I think you and I don't remember if this was once we started recording this, but you mentioned that you haven't really done any acting in the last few years. Your focus has changed,
Yeah. It's true.
and I think once a performer, always a performer to some
Yes.
degree. But your emphasis and your priorities have changed, and you're talking about being a mentor and a director and a teacher. Talk a little bit more about that transition and why that's important to you.
Um, my mom died in 2013. And when she died, a lot of my will and my why kind of left a little bit. Like I didn't know why I was performing anymore. And she taught me the importance of giving back. And I've always taught in between my career because it kind of has helped ground me. But it wasn't until 2017 when my best friend, who I've known since the first national tour of Fosse we did at 21 years old, we've been friends that long, said, we are doing the same thing. Why don't we join forces and give back to the next generation of artists? And I said, and we started with a summer program, and then now we coach and mentor, and we coach anything from, because we've done it all, right? So we've done
Mhm,
acting for camera, so we can help you
mhm,
with acting for camera and film and TV. Acting for musical theater, we've done all these roles, very similar: Lola, Cassie, Bomb Ballerina, all these big like triple threat roles. Um, and then we help with college prep, and we help with career prep, and it's just fun. I mean, I feel like I have more of a purpose when I
mm,
am giving back to the next generation. I feel a pressure to perform that I don't really enjoy, and I
mm.
think this show is different. But becoming a director is this last reiteration. I just joined the STC union, which I'm very excited. It's the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union, and it's a big deal to join. And I'm finally, after about 5 to 7 years since my mom has passed, I was been on the creative side because I really enjoy the creative process now.
Yeah.
And I think that my acting and my strong background and my work really helps me with how I am with actors. I really am trying to be the director I would love, you know.
Oh,
So I'm thrilled that I'm calling this like my second act. I'm 42. My mentor I look up to big time runs the whole department at musical theater. She has been casting me. She's been casting me, hiring me as a director for the graduation showcases at AMDA, and I have been learning so much. It's been a wonderful training ground for me there. And I'm
Mm.
about to make my directorial debut in the professional world, doing Nonsense in Fort Myers, Florida, at Gulf
Oh my
Coast
gosh.
in the spring.
Another great show.
Yeah.
Uh, you just said something that I think is significant for anybody in any place in their life. You talked about that you are teaching and you're directing and you're mentoring, and you said, and I learn a lot doing that. And isn't that interesting, Chryssie, that when we are in a place where we are the one teaching and working with people who may not be as far along in their walk as we are, we think of ourselves as mentors. And I've told people before in doing mentoring roles, if you don't walk away as a mentor learning as much as your mentees,
Yes.
you miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I agree. And I think our mentees are amazing, and just the people that every dance class that I teach here in New York City, I hug and meet every single person that comes in that room. I
mm,
say, hi, what's your name? I think it's super important that people are seen and heard.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift that we were given. I mean, bring it back to chorus line. In What I Did for Love, the song, it says, the gift was ours to borrow. So
mhm,
this gift of performing and giving and it's borrowed, and then
that's
we
right.
take it, we run with it, and then now I don't get off on it like I did when I was younger. I remember I just I don't, but I do get off on connection and human connection, and
uh,
I think that that's what theater still does for me, which is why I still want to be in it and would love a long career as a director, choreographer, or even a director.
yeah, yeah, I get that. You mentioned Nonsense, but that's not the only project you have going. You have a very special project that's coming up in New York next month. Do you want to talk a little bit about your one woman show?
Yes, yes. Um, I wrote a show called In My Own Little Corner, a work in progress with bipolar disorder. So this is our little flyer that we came up with, all the different feels and colors. And um, so I decided to do this show. It's not only my story, but it's my mother's story.
Mm,
And like I said before, she passed away in 2013. So this is I'm her voice now. Um, it's a raw and real story that I'm trying to bring forth to light so that we can have conversations around mental illness, um, that there is hope, and that we can stop the stigma, and that all of us seem to have a little bit of something, you know? I
yes.
just think a little bit of something. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this big diagnosis, but just what I'm trying to do with this show is say, hey, look, and especially like with the chorus line, like we can go back and look at every little step, and you're like, you're running into cameras and you were kind of sporadic. And I think there was a little bit of excitement and manic, a little manic that is in Christine that
Mm,
I found out later when I was writing this show, that I was like, and I say it in the show, I'm like, did I get Christine because I actually had this condition, this disorder?
interesting.
Interesting, right? And at the time it wasn't unmanageable. And I've been on medicine, and I got diagnosed at 38, so I'm 42, so I've
Yeah.
got diagnosed kind of late. And I was really shocked by it. So the whole show is me kind of kind of saying, all right, y'all, let's go on this journey together. Get ready,
Yeah.
hang in there. It's gonna be raw, it's gonna be real, and you're probably gonna
Good.
cry. But just know that there is hope and there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the only reason why I am sharing this story with you is because if I don't share, how can we care?
Mm,
If we don't share with each other,
yes.
how can we absolutely care? How can you sit there and say, well, this girl who's had X, Y, and Z, and she's gotten it all together, and she's always just a bubbly energizer bunny, you know? Well, there was something behind that.
Yeah.
And second of all, if I didn't get it treated and I didn't know this, it can lead to Alzheimer's, dementia, and even suicide.
Right. That's right.
So I don't. So, and I'm by my diagnosis is bipolar too, but it's just to say, hey, here's a story. Can you empathize?
Mm,
I'm not claiming to be the poster child for bipolar disorder. That's not it at all. It really is to normalize the conversation, which is how I'm doing this with you right now. And let me tell you, a year ago, if you asked me, Chryssie, you told me, Chryssie, you're going to be on like podcasts and interviews and you're going to have written a show even a year ago, it wasn't, no way. I was in such hiding and such secret.
Wow. Yeah.
But if I can talk about it normal, then maybe other people can start to see that it's not this dun dun dun.
I think that is fantastic. And, my hope is we have started to open the door for some of these things a little more
Yeah.
than what has happened in the past. It's not, I think there's still a certain amount of stigma that comes from misunderstanding and miscommunication, but thank you for doing that. It is a place of transparency and vulnerability, but I do think it's important. So I'm just going to encourage that anybody, I told Chryssie earlier that I'm still trying to figure out, can I get to New York in November for this, one night, November 5th? Eventually, at some point, your hope is to be able to sell this out, to be able to make it available in other venues, whether that's through recording and having it out on streaming platforms, taking it on the road and presenting it in other places. So for those who cannot make it to New York the first week in November, keep your eyes and ears open, and we'll share a little bit here at the end about how you can continue to follow Chryssie and her journey. A couple more questions for you today.
Before we do that,
Yeah, yes.
I'm so sorry. I realized.
Nope.
Most importantly, to add that this is a benefit. So no, all proceeds of this show, I have written this as a gift. I've been working on it all year long. I've done 2 readings of it, and now this will be the 3rd, and this will be the one in the stage. It's going to the Actors Entertainment Community Fund, which is formerly known as the Actors Fund.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if this does move forward and it does have a big life and a fruitful life, like touring and people are bringing us in, and then what I would want is tickets, a big portion of the ticket sales moving forward would be going towards a fund specifically geared towards artists who can't afford psychiatric and medicinal care.
Oh, that's important.
So that's really where it all came from. Like, if I share this message and people come and watch it, and the money, huge, like a big portion of their money, well, this time right now, all the proceeds are going to. So even if you can't make it and you feel inspired by the story a little bit, there's some more stuff on my website. You can check some reels out and that kind of thing. You can also just do a donation to the Entertainment Community Fund, and it's on the website of where you buy a ticket. So at there, it says you can buy a ticket or you can make a donation.
Yeah. And we'll post that. I'll make sure that that's available through my sites as well as we continue to promote this and promote your show. Chryssie, we talked about the fact that there's the performer element and you have had visibility. This is kind of an off the wall question, but do people recognize you on the street at any point? Do you find that people come up to you and either say, "You're Chryssie Whitehead," or they say, "You look familiar. Who are you?"
I do get that. It's so funny. I do. And I get very embarrassed when I'm around other people, because I had a story the other day where I was at the US Open and I was meeting I just happened to be I actually made these amazing friends of these 2 adults and their partners, and me and my husband. And so there was like 6 of us hanging out, chatting, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And then she got us into this like club. Anyway, she's walking by. She doesn't know anything about me. She's just met me. Right. And we're just chatting, and I said, I'm a teacher, yada, yada. And then I'm leaving and I'm going to the thing and I walk away. And then she ran up to me later, like 10 minutes later. She goes, "Are you famous?" I was like, "What?" She's like, "Are you a celebrity? You're a celebrity, aren't you?" I was like, "Why are you saying that?" She goes, "Because that girl just recognized you back there." She was like, "Oh my God, that's her. That's her." And I was like, "Oh my God." And then I got embarrassed because this was like I would quote unquote call these people who are not theater people more normal people, which is really not right. But she was like, a business lady, right? And she was like, "Oh my gosh, that girl totally recognized you." So I saw the girl later on, and she was like, "It is you." She was like, "You're Rachel in Revenge of the Bridesmaids." So I have like 3 things. It's so funny. It's Revenge of the Bridesmaids is a movie I did, and people still have seen it. Every Little Step.
Yeah.
And Grey's Anatomy, because people are watching it so much, like
right.
Even though I was on it such a long time ago. But yeah, they do. And even we were shooting something in Plaza Square, and for some students at Steps, and they said, Chryssie, this couple walked by you and was like, I think that's Chryssie Whitehead. She was on Broadway. I think that's Chryssie Whitehead. And I just laugh because I'm not in the business like that anymore. And Mom used to always say, like, you better be grateful for when people are saying stuff like that to you, because
Mhm.
that means something to them when they say, and then so I remember when I was in the thick of it, especially during a chorus line, I got recognized all the time.
Sure.
And, and I would always say, what's your name? Thank you so much. Instead of being like, oh, thanks. It just kind of takes it. And that's my mama.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
Final question for you. What else? What else do you want to still accomplish?
Oh gosh. Um, I really just want to accomplish maintaining peace. I just I'm really not really interested. I love what I do, and I love the arts. And yes, I want to keep working in the arts, and I would love for theaters to hire hire me. Um, so I'm definitely interested in that. But I think I'm really interested in the being, and I'm
Mm,
interested on this self-care journey of maintaining peace inside my heart and my mind,
yeah,
so that I can be strong for my husband, my family unit, and it's not perfect, and I still struggle, and I still battle. I just manage it a lot better now because I have medicine and I have
yeah,
therapy.
yeah. It's never going to be perfect, right? I mean, we do
No.
the best we can. Well, I want to let people know that they can find you online as well. They can go to your website at www.chryssiewhitehead.com. They need to be aware of how you spell your first name. It's not necessarily what people automatically think, but they can find you pretty easily out there. They
Yeah,
can, if they're not sure any place else,
just Google it. It should come up.
Google it, it'll pop up. But there's a lot out there that they can continue to follow. And I encourage people to do that. Follow Chryssy's journey. If you can make it to her show in November, do that. If you can't, consider donating. Um, but there is just a lot there's a lot worthwhile about following your journey, Chryssie Whitehead. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us and
Thank you
talk
so
about
much.
all of it today. It's
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure, and I just continue to wish you all the best.
Thank you for finding me and seeking me
Yeah,
out. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
All the best.
All the best. All right, that was our conversation with Chryssie Whitehead. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was obviously a tremendous pleasure getting to speak with Chryssie and hear her story. And it's fascinating. We make so many assumptions about people who are in show business, if you will, and we kind of think, well, their lives just must all be together all the time. It must be easy. And I think there's a tremendous amount of life lesson in hearing all about Chryssie's journey. I do want to share a couple of things with you. Um, and I'm kind of switching my camera view here so I can show you some things. But there is we already talked a little bit about Chryssie's site, but I want to show you on her site. You can find, first of all, just kind of fun to open the site and see her dancing there. But there's a tremendous amount, not only about her background, the things that she's done, and you can kind of go, oh, yeah, I remember seeing Chryssie in these various roles in these various places, either on TV or if you've had a chance to see some of her stage work. That's her resume, which is crazy. But I wanted to also show, you can read her entire story, but as you get down toward the bottom of her site, you will also find information about her upcoming shows. And you can see right there in my own little corner the benefit performance that's coming up. So if that is something that you are able to get to or donate to, you can do that. By the way, Carol and I have, since we had this conversation together with Chryssie, Carol and I have been able to make arrangements to be in New York to do some things, see some shows, visit some people the first week in November. And we have tickets now to go see Chrissy's show in my own little corner. So I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to actually seeing how she presents this and having an opportunity to support the work that she's doing. A few other things coming up. I know we've already gone a little bit long. I do want to share a few things with you. What is happening next week? We've got a conversation with John Weller. John is a friend from years past, but another fascinating individual. He is a first violinist with the Seattle Symphony. He is an author. He wrote a book called Violin Down several years ago. It's kind of an amazing and once again vulnerable and transparent story about his own life and some of the challenges that he faced several years back. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And he his sailing out of Puget Sound is a part of his life too. So we're going to have just kind of a fun, interesting conversation with John that I hope you can tune in next week and participate in as well. Also want to share with you, I posted some things about this week, and I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that Coffee Breaks with Steve is now available on podcast sites. The video and audio versions of we have a number of our past shows on there. Recent shows are already available, and we're adding more to the podcast sites, uploading more to the podcast sites on a regular basis, so that we'll have the entire or a large history of Coffee Breaks with Steve available for people to go out and see. So if you want to share these, you can go out to Spotify and find audio and video recordings of Coffee Breaks with Steve as podcasts on there, as well as Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. All you need to go do is go to those sites and under the search, type in Coffee Breaks with Steve. Make sure you spell breaks correctly, and we should come up and you should be able to see them. They're not going there live, so recorded versions are added after the show has taken place. Today's show will be up there within 24 hours, and we are continuing to add to that. So just wanted to let you know that. And Jim, I agree with you. John Weller will be fun. It's just, listen, I appreciate that you're all here. It's always a lot of fun to have the conversations. It's great to have guests on here. And it's also important that we have the conversation. You're here for a reason. You're here hopefully to enjoy the guests, but also to enjoy each other. We have the conversation together, and I hope you continue to do that. Thank you so much for being here. Just want to thank you all. I want to let you get on with your weekend, and I want you to enjoy it. And I just want to remind you once again to find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.